Welcome back to One Man's Journey podcast. I am Ryan Speltz, and today, this is kind of developing into one of my favorite people. I think we've had some cool interactions, and I've got Kyle Draper here. He's a dad, he's a husband, he's an author, he's a speaker. I had the privilege of seeing him speak at AIM Fuse about a week and a half ago, and it was a very, very pleasant experience. So I appreciate that from you, Kyle, and
yes,
I was super excited to bring you on right after meeting you officially in person. So I'll pass it on over to you and tell us your story, man.
Dude, well, first of all, I don't think I was paid for being your logo. I didn't that's my body in that logo, I think.
Yeah, my bad. I'll work on that after
if you want to cut me a check. That may not even be funny. If you're listening to the podcast, then that's not even funny because I'm a big boned person that looks nothing like that logo.
Well, those are bones. Those aren't muscles. Those are bones.
Oh, then I do look like that.
I'll give you 5% of the $0 profit we're making off all that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man. Ryan, I'm so excited to be on here. You know, I do so much speaking about business, about social media. You know, so to just be able to show up and talk man to man and just be raw and authentic, you know, I'm super excited about it. Man, my story, as I've gotten older, I've grown to appreciate it more, but most of my life, I didn't really like telling it because it didn't come with a ton of pitfalls. It didn't I don't have this man, I was strung out on this or I was addicted to that. I grew up in an incredible family. Where my family had all been pastors and so I grew up in a Christian home where, you know, mom and dad genuinely loved each other and were present and available to us. Early, in elementary school, my parents got into a business where they actually started making money. And so I got to watch them grow an incredible company. And so now being 40 years old and a business owner, I'm so much more appreciative of those things that I didn't appreciate early on. But man, what's been the biggest thing for me throughout my story is just the consistent message of loving people. And I think, especially when it comes to men, you know, we're kind of painted as the more macho you are, the less emotions you should feel. And, you know, we have to be careful, letting our family see us cry or struggle. And, man, I just had the privilege of growing up in a family that was full of compassion and grew up watching my parents just genuinely love every single human being that came across their path, whether significantly or not. And it's my favorite part of me, you know, that now I'm a guy that, man, I just freaking love people. I love people. And so whether that means, you know, I get to speak in Vegas in front of, 2,000 people with you last week, or I get to sit at coffee with you when you're in Dallas, Fort Worth sometime, and we spend 2 hours together just talking. I just love waking up every day knowing that this is another opportunity to impact somebody's life. And it requires vulnerability to do that. And it requires selflessness. And those aren't typically two of the qualities that manly men are identified as. And so, in a weird way, maybe I've had a complex that I think I'm manly, but I don't do all the natural manly things. You know, I don't own an axe. I don't cut wood. I don't hunt. I don't, so yeah, man, it's been an interesting journey. And I'm excited to see where this conversation takes us.
Yeah. I think, you show through with the support that you mentioned. I think that shows through in everything that I've seen. And I know that that's not everything. Right. And I know that there's pieces where you're like, man, I wish I could do this better or that better. And, you know, just from the outside in, everything you do has that message behind it, whether you say it or not. So that's, you know, there's a reason that I continue to come back to you like, dude, let's connect, let's get,
Yeah.
me being on your podcast and now you being on this one. Like it's such a cool experience to connect with somebody that, you know, we just met for the first time last week and we've known each other now for 6 to 8 months, and it's really cool. So, you know, you mentioned that you didn't have any struggle, and I'm going to challenge you on that, Kyle.
Sure.
Because I think that there is something there if you're being honest with yourself, and maybe the fact that you didn't have struggle is the struggle.
And I you know, I think, Ryan, it's obviously I didn't live a life absent from struggle. I just didn't have the traditional struggle that people connect to, you know, growing up. So like, you know, I was the guy that, like, I was a virgin when I got married, and that was always an embarrassing thing, not, you know, something that you're like, yeah, I'm 26. And, you know, like, and so my struggle just looked different.
Yeah.
I don't think it was greater or less than other people. Man, in total transparency, like, my biggest struggle growing up and being a young man was like, my parents were famous in their circle, right? Everybody knew who the Drapers were. And so for 30 years of my life, you know, I was Randy and Elizabeth Draper's son. And so my greatest struggle was, at what point do I ever become enough to where they're Kyle's parents, not the other way around? And so I think that's been the biggest struggle for me through my 20s, for sure, was just that whole identity thing of when will I ever measure up to stand on my own and not just have this connection again, which is amazing. I love my parents the most, but that was a big thing. Was trying to figure out, like, who am I really? And I'd like to hope that that's something that all of us as men, I don't know that we ever achieve. Maybe we do. I don't. At least I know I haven't got there yet. But
when you say you haven't got there, are you saying you haven't gotten out from the shadow that you've talked about, or are you saying that you haven't established who you are?
I'm outside the shadow. You know, that.
You remember
that
when that happened?
Do what?
Do you remember, like, is there like a, you know, obviously there's not like a exact, so you have exact moment in time when you remember that.
Now, I mean, I couldn't tell you like it was, you know, a crisp fall morning,
yeah,
on, you know, October
well, maybe
3rd.
start building that story around it.
But it was, man. So when I, you know, so I went to college to, I wanted to be a Sports Center anchor. That was like my dream job. Maybe it's still secretly my dream job to this day. I don't know. But a semester shy of graduating college, I just felt this absolute calling to become a pastor. And so I got my parents' blessing. I quit college a semester shy of graduating, moved back home, started interning at our church. And it's the church I grew up in. It's the church where my dad used to preach on stage for our like, so again, I chose to go into the element where I was Randy Elizabeth Draper's son. And so as this is happening, you know, I go from the, you know, I'm just an intern to an assistant, and then I'm in charge of 6th grade, and then I'm in charge of junior high. And I'll never forget that I had moved from like our main location. This was at a mega church with multi-site. And so I'd moved to a different location where no one knew who I was at the time. No one knew my family. And a few months later, my parents come out to visit on a Sunday, and people start going, "Are you Kyle's parents? Are you Kyle's parents? Oh, we love your son." And it was the first moment for me where I was like, these people don't like me because of how great my parents are. These people don't like me because they just want to be close to a Draper. Like, these are my people. And my parents are the visitors. Like, they're the ones that are foreign to them. And dude, it was such a it was such a liberating moment to finally feel like, in that moment, I think I was like, I've arrived. This is the greatest day of my life. It wasn't, and there's plenty of days since then that would be far more valuable. But yeah, it was huge for my growth to finally be able to say, like, I am standing on my own 2 feet because of who I am and what I'm capable of. And it's not because of anything else. And that was a big day for me.
Yeah, I can see how that could be, like, definitely a drive, right? Like, and I think we've all experienced that to some extent, right? Like, there's always something, like, you're associated with somebody else or something else that it's not you, and you want to separate
Yeah.
from it. And then that becomes your drive of like, okay, I gotta make and do it for myself. I gotta be myself. I've gotta find that. What after that point, like, because if that's a main drive of someone or of you especially to up to that point, like after that realization goes, like that's the peak of like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Like where did it go from there? How did your drive develop from there?
And so what's weird is like the next moment like that I remember, it was, gosh, like 10 years later. And this was probably just 4 years ago. Um, and I, again, because of my ministry background. So some of this I'm like unpacking for the first time right now with you that I've really never even given a lot of thought to. But because I was in ministry, like, we don't get paid jack crap and when we're pastors, for people that may not know that. And so, like, my parents had always supported me and then, my family financially when we needed it, because they knew we weren't making very much money. And so I think I took that for granted. And so when I left church ministry when I was 30, about 10 years ago, and got into the business world, that carried over. If I ever got stuck, if something ever happened, like, they were always there to bail me out. And I remember about 4 years ago, I was speaking at an event, and during the event, my wife was calling me, and I couldn't answer, and I call her back after the event's over, and she informs me that, like, the lights in our house aren't on, and the reason they weren't on is because we couldn't afford to pay the light bill, and I'm having this moment, and so we get off the phone, and my first thought, bro, was call your dad, right? Like, he'll give you the money to, and man, I don't know why, like, this didn't happen sooner. And I don't know why that day was the day that it happened, but that day, like, I remember sitting in the country club parking lot where I just spoke and going, this is it. I'm not, like, if I make this call, who knows when I'll ever actually stop enabling myself. I could blame my parents, but the reality was I'm putting myself in these positions. And so I remember going, no, I'm not going to call them. And being honest with myself, I knew that I had all these people that had said they wanted to coach with me, but I wasn't following up. I wasn't being intentional. I wasn't putting in the work. And bro, literally, I sat in that parking lot. I made 4 phone calls. I picked up 4 $1,000 a month clients in less than 20 minutes. And it changed everything. And so that was really, like, the moment at church, what was more about, ego and pride. This moment was more about, like, bro, you are capable of so much more, but you're being safe. You're being lazy. You're not being a man, right? Like, I had 2 kids at that point, and man, that's one of the single defining moments of my life, even though it happened when I was like 36 years old. For me to realize, like, the only thing standing between me and what I want is my willingness to work for it. And that was a huge thing for me. And something that even to this day, like, I still have to be intentional about, because one of my greatest weaknesses is, like, I love to be lazy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, like, I'm so jealous of of so many of my friends that just have this relentless work ethic. And I've always thought, man, like, I wish I had that. When the reality is I can, it just doesn't come as naturally to me as it may to you. But man, that was that's a story that I'll tell for the rest of my life as one of those, like, defining moments that changed everything for me.
And to have the availability of not even up until that point, you didn't recognize what you had already built, right? Like you mentioned, you don't have an axe and you don't have tools, and, like, bro, you built that though. Like, you had already built the empire that you didn't even realize was there until somebody pushed you up against a wall, grabbed you by the throat, and said, "It's time for you to do that." And
Yeah.
we know who that was, right?
Yeah.
Like, we know who that was,
Yep.
and it's the whispers that come that we don't recognize until we've already acknowledged it, or we blew it off and went, man, there was something there and I missed that. And so I'm sure after that point, you could go back to all of the other moments and go, had the same opportunity there and there and there and there. And you're just like, that's the part that I get stuck in, man.
And dozens and dozens. And, and I was always the guy, that people would always use the P word with, right? The potential word, right? Man, that guy, he has so much potential. And when you're younger, like, that's a great word, right? Like, I mean, every high school boy would love to be said about their, sports prowess, and, like, man, like, you have so much, but when you hit your 30s and that's still the word that people are saying, man, it starts to sting, and at some point, like, I mean, we've all seen how many people wash out of pro sports that came in with so much potential, and for whatever the reason, they never got there. And I just got tired of that being the word that people were using to describe me. And I'm still fighting it. That's my everyday battle is, can I absolutely live this day to its full and not leave any energy on the table, not leave any opportunity, untapped into. It's hard work, man.
Yeah. That's putting in, that's the mental work, right? And that's why this podcast exists, if we're being honest, right? For me, this is that for me. Like, I get to show up every day and just converse with people that have experiences, and you say potential. And I don't know if this was me and you on your podcast, or if this was me and somebody else on another episode of this, because now they're all starting to blend together a little bit.
Yeah.
But I've had that exact conversation about, like, I just get tired of hearing the word potential, and I still hear it to today. And that, I know, like, now the way you said that was like, you call somebody with a difficulty and, like, don't worry about it. You've got all the potential in the world. You'll figure it out. Oh, just like it's just like you said, some people would grab that and go, oh, thank God I've got it. Like, I'm going to be okay. And I'm like, wow, like, it drives me to the core. It burns me to the inside. And so I had this thought this morning of a question, and to be honest, I haven't unpacked it myself, but maybe this might've been the answer.
Let's see.
But the question was, what's the one word that drives you and why? If you could break everything down to one word.
Man, I think for me, it would either be purpose or people. I don't know which one I would pick. I mean, they play on each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I think it's probably people. Like, that would be my word. Because I feel like God put me on this earth to be an encourager of people, to be a motivator of people, that there's always somebody that has it worse than I do. And so, I feel like I've made it my life's mission. Well, my mission statement in life is to leave people better than I find them. That's my goal. In every room I go into, when I'm in Vegas with you last week speaking, like my sole purpose is that every single person that I interacted with, whether we got to hang out or whether we just got to pass in the hall and I got to smile at you, but that you would leave that event going, man, you know who stood out to me? Was that Kyle Draper guy. And not because of him, but because of the way he made me feel when he was present. And that's it, man. Like that's, if I can do that well, then I truly believe that everything around me gets better. Now, my struggle in that is that I can be so good at that my family gets the crumbs from the meal that I serve to everyone else. Right? Because you know this, you work with people every day. Like people are exhausting, yet I love them. And so I exhaust myself every day pouring into people. And so where I have to really fight and where I need to be way better is that I don't give them 90% of me and then leave the remaining 10 to be split up between my now 3 kids and my wife. They deserve the absolute best. And so that is incredibly difficult because at some point I have to say no to the people that I want to help in order to nurture and serve the people that God ultimately called me to the most, which is my wife and kids.
Now there's a couple different directions there of the you say you're cutting them off and you have to say no to them in a way that can help them because
Sure.
it can make them self-survive for that period of time that you're not there, right? So there's a positive side to that too.
Yeah.
The other piece is you mentioned giving the 90% and you're only got 10% left over. What do you do for yourself in that time frame to get that 90% back so that you can then give 100%, which I know you want to do, to your family? What fills that cut back up for you?
Yeah, man, it's a great question. Right now, probably not much. Like where I end up replenished at the end of the night, whether it's watching sports or watching a show with my wife after the kids have gone to bed, and so it's not being done intentional enough. When I used to work outside of our house, because now my office is at our house, right? So there was that drive home or on days that like I speak on the other side of town. I've got an hour in the car that kind of allows me to decompress and I show up with more energy than I would have. But a lot of days, I mean, I walk out my office door and 3 steps later is the kitchen and there isn't anything that in that moment of transition I've used to refill myself. And so it now it just has to be intentional of, even though I say I have 10% left, like I can give more. It's just not going to come naturally. Like I've got to force it. I've got to say, no, you're not going to sit on the couch. Like you're going to go, play in the backyard with the kids. And that is what needs to be done more. Because again, I told you in the very beginning, like my kryptonite is like, I love being lazy. I love just sitting on the couch and watching TV. And so I need to do a better job of figuring out like what that replenishment looks like so that I have more to give.
Yeah, this is one thing that my wife and I have continual struggles over because I work from home as well. And my office is in the middle of the house. Like it's the last door before the big room with the kitchen and the dining room and the living room. And it's the first door on the way to the bedroom. So like literally it's the middle of the house. So I walk out of the door and whether she's in the bedroom or the kitchen or the living room, I'm in the middle, right? And so, we've worked on that of like, okay, I'm going to head towards the back of the house and I'm going to go out the back door. And I'm just going to take 10 minutes. And like sometimes that strategy works. Obviously, if there's something that crazy happened in a day, sometimes it doesn't. But that's been a big thing for us too, is just like, okay, I've got to have that separation time. Otherwise, you're not going to get the best of me. Like if you try to jump in, it's like, and it's not even preventable at that point because you're coming right off of high energy, high output, high helping to I need a break and I'm not getting it. It doesn't work that way.
Well, bro, wait till y'all throw kids in the mix. And now, like, I'm exhausted because I've worked all day. My wife is equally, if not more, exhausted because she's been with kids all day. But then she wants to pass the kids off to me, rightfully so. But in my mind, I'm like, but I just work too, like, and so, dude, this is just why, and maybe this is a turn in the conversation. Like, I think for men, we need to do a better job of sacrificing. I think it's so easy for men to say, like, you're the mom, you need to deal with the kids. I'm the man, I work, I take care of and the reality is like, my wife feels most loved by me when she knows I'm sacrificing inside of my own exhaustion to provide her some sanctuary to go and replenish herself. And it's just so counterintuitive, right? Which is why 50% of marriages end in divorce, because most of us will never be able to truly come to it with a selfless nature where I put her needs over mine. But that's what it comes down to, like, most nights in our family. And dude, it's freaking hard.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think
go ahead.
You had a but. I want to hear your but.
Well, I'll just say, but we have to look at, like, what is at stake? My hour on the couch doing nothing, or serving the woman that I'm madly in love with and would give anything for. And that should be an easier decision every day. It's not, but that's the constant right and wrong opportunity that we get every single day to really screw things up or make them go, wow, that's the guy that I married.
Yeah, I think we get caught into the doing a lot though too, right? Like you're saying, when you're doing things and sacrificing your peace to do those things, or sacrificing what you would normally do for yourself, right? So we do those things. And I think we get caught in the doing a lot. And we actually just met with a counselor last night, and he asked me a direct question. He said, what does your wife want from this relationship?
Yeah.
And I said, emotional connection. And he said, bingo. And then he asked her, he said, because they had a conversation prior, and he said, Carrie, do you know what Ryan wants from this relationship? And he said, to be believed.
Yeah, dude.
Like,
heavy, man.
And I could feel it in my throat right now, just thinking that, like, it's such a realization, right? Yep. And so I think that that's really where your statement is going by the sacrifice piece, is it creates belief in the fact that we care and that we do have the emotion, because they can see the emotion through our actions. And so trying to find that way has been extremely difficult for me.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the kid, like the kids, and I'm not saying the kids are easy, but if I had kids, for me, it would be easier, because I could go, okay, I'm gonna go take care of the kids. And it shows what you're explaining, right? Like that, it's an A plus B equals C equation for me.
Well, we'll do another episode when you have kids.
Like I said, I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy, but the concept,
still feel that way. 100%. I totally see. I totally get what you're saying.
And so, when it's just us two, it's like, I get stuck in the, like, okay, well, why can't you find your own peace when I'm expected to find my own peace, kind of thing. And I get stuck in that track, and it's really hard for me to break out of that. But the way you framed that, of they want to see that you're sacrificing a little bit to make sure that they're happy as well, that's a huge direct route to what.
Bro, my parents have almost been married 45 years, I think. And when you ask them, like, how'd you get here? Their response every time is like, we've spent our entire marriage trying to outserve the other one. And it sounds so simple, yet it's so profound, because most people don't have a freaking clue how to serve anybody other than themselves.
And most don't even know that.
So,
in all honesty, I mean, I think that with your parents, especially, and a lot of other relationships that have success with that faith piece that's behind that.
Yeah.
That, you mentioned that people don't know how to serve other people, and I said they don't know how to serve themselves, and it's because they don't have that aspect behind it, right? They don't have
Absolutely.
they don't listen to the whispers that we talked about earlier. They don't listen to the calling or the passion. It's serve the master, go to work, get the money, come home, pay the bills, and they expect to be loved because they pay the bills.
That's it, man.
And that's how they see as servancy. And our entire US philosophy for too freaking long has been that, right? Like you mentioned, men expect the women to stay home with the kids. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to come home, and then I'm going to go to my second job because you're not working. And then I'm going to blame you and resent you for that too.
Right.
It just creates this entire idea of servancy that's just not the truth.
Man, I want to commend you publicly on the podcast, like for y'all going to counseling, because we've done the same. We did premarital counseling before we got married, and then we do periodical checkups with our same counselor that did our premarital counseling, now going on 14 years. And so there's so many men that they won't even do that, because to even show up there, they'd have to admit that something could be their fault. And their ego, their pride keeps them from doing so. So, bro, I'm just proud of you for, having a willingness to even do that, because it's going to be the reason y'all stay married, and not just stay married, but actually stay in love and be best friends. And what we teach our kids, what I teach them the most is, the moment I hear them blaming, I say, whoa, what do we say? Take responsibility. We are incapable of change without admitting that we have some fault to play. We're incapable. We cannot change without admitting that something we're doing or not doing is the cause of that. And so I think that's where we as men have to really look in the mirror and go, how often am I willing to own stuff that I did, and then humble myself enough to go seek forgiveness, to go choose to be better? Because it's just so easy to go, nope, that's your fault. But the minute, bro, I blame you, I just gave you the power. You now control my life. And so that's a whole nother conversation.
That's usually how these go. That's usually how these have been going, is we get to that deep part and we're like, man, we could go 8 different directions with this. And I love it. Like, I think that sparks future episodes or future conversations. And I think that even just creating those conversations is huge. And honestly, man, like, we could probably go all day. Like I said, like, I think we've had that interaction in person. We've had that interaction on podcasts, and I'm more than happy to have you back if you're interested in coming back and having some more conversations and helping some more people. I know that just your message in general, and your, while your story wasn't built out of the fire, I still think you have a passion and something burning inside of you that is commendable and something to follow. And so I would encourage people to reach out to you in some way, shape, or form, whether it's just following you, on Facebook or TikTok or wherever, because you're everywhere. I would encourage them to try to interact with you. And,
come find me, people.
Yeah. He's good people. So I appreciate it, Kyle.
Thanks, bro.
Like I said, I could spill all day and just, keep gushing over it, but we'll get to the end of the episode, and
we'll save some for later.
Yeah, there we go. I appreciate it. And we will see you on the next one.